Welcome to Game of Attention. Today we have Hamit and Jen with us. Jen, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure, I'm Jen Clinehens. I run a marketing consultancy, behavioral science-driven marketing consultancy called Choice Hacking. We're actually located, despite my accent, we are located in the UK, but we have clients all over the world. So we basically use different kinds of AI, behavioral science and marketing psychology, to help create customer experiences that are more emotional for customers, that help build engagement between brands and customers, and hopefully kind of get into some of those deep-rooted drives, behavioral barriers, the things that are kind of standing between your customers and actually, engaging with or participating in your brand.
Fab, thank you. Hamit?
Yeah, this is Hamit Soyel. So I'm a chief scientist and inventor at Dragonfly AI, and also hold a position at Queen Mary University of London. So I'm a digital environment research institute fellow. So I've been working on cognitive science, human-machine interaction, human-in-the-loop decision support systems for intelligent healthcare, and science outreach for the past 20 years.
So the article that we're looking at today is about how Americans specifically are a little frightened about superintelligent AI. I will link the article in the newsletter. My first question, Jen, I'd like to point to you if that's okay.
Sure.
So from a behavioral and neurological perspective, why do you think that there is a significant disconnect between public sentiment, as revealed by this article, and the goals of major AI companies in pursuing superintelligent AI? What cognitive and emotional factors might be contributing to this?
It's going to be a lot of different things. The first one that springs to mind for me, because we're talking about, like a general intelligence. So this is, I think, in people's minds, when you ask them about superintelligent AI, almost everyone is going to pull up examples like Skynet, like Terminator, these very vivid sort of emotional examples that they know from pop culture, right? And that kind of speaks to a cognitive bias called availability bias. So availability bias basically says that when you've got these really vivid or recent memories, that's kind of what you base your behavior or your opinions on. So an example might be, you see on the news that somebody has been killed in a shark attack in Australia, and you're in America, and all of a sudden you're really hesitant to go in the ocean. I mean, it's not more or less likely that you're going to get attacked by a shark at any point, but it's very recent in your memory. It's very vivid. It's very emotional, and therefore you base your behavior off of it. So, while it is a little glib to say, Skynet and AI are the same thing, I think to a lot of people, that's the best example they can think of when you ask them about something like a super intelligent, AI. They think, oh, well, it must be bad, because we just don't have very many sort of vivid examples or emotional examples of AI being positive in people's lives. So that's definitely that. I think a big part of it. Related to that, I mean, you have things like loss aversion. A lot of the conversation around, this general intelligence AI is it's going to take everybody's job. Oh God, and despite the fact, you like your job or don't like your job, you don't want someone to take it from you. You don't want anyone to take anything from you. So I definitely think that's a part of it. And then the last one I would say is a principle called zero risk bias, which basically says, we don't like things that are uncertain. We only really want to take actions based off of a very certain outcome. And when you talk about AI, I mean, I think uncertainty is there not just for the general public, but also for the people that work in, sort of the AI field. They're not really sure where things are going to go or what the implications might be for new technology, in the same way that, previous points in history, I mean, who could have predicted like where electricity would take us, or, computing, these kind of things. So I think it's the uncertainty that really weighs on people's minds as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can add. Yeah. So for the cognitive bias, yeah, that was well covered. So I might have. So also confirmation bias, yeah. So that could also contribute to the divide. And then because people seek information that confirms their beliefs, and then they want some reinforcement from that, and then some negative views can appear, which could be due to this limited technical knowledge of some people. So there may be some unrealistic fears and skepticism around, and then they might feel that, okay, my peers are feeling this way. Should I be confirming what they believes with my beliefs and be on their side, and then trigger some negative views? And then also maybe some ethical concerns also could kick in and say that, okay, because in US there's problems with where people believe that policies acting differently on different ethnicity, so they may feel that, okay, if the AI is going to make a decision will it gonna have such biases as well? So that could trigger problems as well. So yeah, I think cognitive biases and confirmation biases are the main problems.
It makes me think of the unknown of COVID.
Yeah, that comes back to Jen's position about uncertainty. Yeah, because you don't have enough data. Yeah. So uncertainty helps back to the AI as well. So you would be loving to have AI which can make decisions when there's not enough data, and that is exactly how people are feeling, because we humans are really brilliant things. We can look in the nature and see, okay, this is how it is done in nature. So if this is possible in nature, it means that we can implement it. And one of the things which is started to be implemented is that uncertainty. So looking at how things are happening. So we know if we went to a train station and if a train is late, we know what to do, but not the AI will not know, because they want to go from A to B. That is how they're programmed. So that uncertainty in humanity is something we need to transfer to the AI as well, so that they can learn to model the uncertainty as well.
Hamit, I'm going to throw this one to you. Okay. So the development of AI is often depicted as a technological inevitability by some, while some argue it should be a deeply political and democratic decision. How can our understanding of human behavior and neuroscience help us navigate the complex debate about the role of public input in shaping AI's future? And are there any cognitive biases here at play?
Yeah, I believe fear is the first, because people feel that, okay, AI could be risking my job, risking my benefits or my support, I bet be cautious to look at it. So people may, and these social dynamics can, as the previous example I give, like peer pressure could influence those issues as well. But balancing the tech progress and oversight of public engagement in a transparent way is extremely needed, because we have to listen for diverse perspectives, and then if we're going to progress in this, the ethics should be there. So the biases should be equal to everyone, and there should be more involvement by the experts in the public discussions, and there should be a governance structure which is regulating all this stuff, because I'm not worried about the current state of AI, but if there should be some kind of fear in me, it should be the AI created by the AI. I know we are not there yet, but yeah, that is why there should be all these dynamics and linking back together if we are talking about public's input in AI's future.
I think Hamit makes some really good points. You sound like you're about 30 years down the road from the general public, which is probably good that the general public is not kind of thinking that far down the road. Look, I think, you referenced COVID in the last question, and I do think, there's this psychological tendency you see in people, and it's something called reactance. So a certain percentage of the population, if they feel like something is being forced upon them, like seatbelt laws or helmet laws or COVID vaccines or mask mandates, their initial sort of response to that is to say no, not because it's not a good thing, but because it just is their initial instinct. You told me, and I don't want to be, part of this, crowd that's just blindly following you. So I'm just going to say no. And whether, there's further thought about whether that's the right thing to do or not, there is going to be a certain percentage of people that just say, I'm just not going to do what you asked me to. And I think this idea that this, general intelligence AI is just an inevitability. We can't stop it. We can't control it. We can't put gates on it. I do think it makes a certain subset of the public really feel like, they don't have any input on where sort of the future of society is going. Because I think in some of the ways, you talk about like electricity is a good example, or computing. I mean, who could have thought we would be, where we are now? Like, think about, when the iPhone was introduced, like that wasn't really that long ago. I mean, 2008, that's not even 20 years ago. So in just that short space of time, people haven't really been able to control like where technology in general is kind of steering and shifting society, how it's upending industries. I think a good example, or maybe kind of a bland example though, might be Uber. So do we think it was a good idea to just kind of let Uber do what they wanted to? If you asked people, would you like this sort of gig economy app to come into your city and push out a bunch of people who spend, in some cases, like in New York, I mean, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on taxi licenses and have to go through, a lot of sets of barriers and gates to become somebody who can be trusted to have someone get in the back of the taxi with them and get driven around. Um, as opposed to something like Uber, where you go by the ratings, but you don't necessarily know, who you're getting in the car with, but it's, facilitated by this mobile app. Is that the right thing? And I think in some places you did see pushback where people said, no, I think this is something that we need to debate and regulate and better understand. Versus other places where it was just kind of a free for all, and what happened, and it wasn't always a positive outcome. So, I mean, it's difficult because I think it goes back to kind of the fear, uncertainty, doubt that people are going to have about any new bit of technology. But I certainly think having a voice and a choice will become increasingly important as we start to see like what AI can actually do, because it's still very, very early days. And I think to Hamit's point, a lot of lay people just don't really understand like I mean, a lot of like, technologists and scientists and things also don't understand the implications of letting something out of the box. So it is something I believe, as a society, we need to start having a little bit more of an educated sort of debate or conversation about, to decide, where exactly do we want all of this to head.
So Jen, the last question is, in the context of AI development, the concept of permissionless invention has been prevalent in the tech industry. How can behavioral science and neuroscience shed light on the ethical and psychological aspects of seeking societal buy-in for transformative technologies like AI? And what insights can we gain about the balance between that progress and democratic oversight in this specific context?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about buy-in for anything, it kind of goes back to the reactance point, right? Like people want to feel like they've been heard, like they have an opportunity to give some input. And I would say like co-creation is a big part of any kind of buy-in, right? So whether you're talking about pitching an idea to someone who needs to buy it, whether you're talking about, your IKEA furniture and you want people to feel more bonded with your brand. I mean, you look at behavioral science principles like something like the IKEA effect. So for people who are maybe not familiar, I always say this because for whatever reason I always get this question when this comes up. IKEA is not named after the IKEA effect. The IKEA effect is named after IKEA, the store. But it's this idea that if you co-create something, you become more bonded to it. You're willing to pay more money for it. You feel like you've invested a bit of yourself in the actual end product, so therefore you have a lot more affection towards it. In the same way, if you think about pitching an idea or selling in a business or a product to a client or a customer, if you sit down with them and say, hey, this is what we think we want to do, can you give us some ideas, can you give us some input, and you start to incorporate those ideas and input, all of a sudden people feel much more affectionate towards the idea. They're much more likely to buy it because they see themselves reflected in the idea or product. So again, I think it just goes back to this idea that people do need to feel like they've had a voice, they've had some input. And I think part of that as well, if we want to talk about maybe some of the sort of generalized AI intelligence, we can maybe back up a little bit and think about some of the examples we've already had of artificial intelligence engines that have been built, but have been built in a biased way, not consciously, but that existing, the folks that have put together these models have an existing bias, and there's a million of different ways that could go, and it gets accidentally baked into the artificial intelligence. So a good example would be, the issue that Amazon had a few years ago, where they had mostly white male engineers who built an HR like AI tool, and it was going through all of these different resumes, and it started to favor people from specific schools, people of a specific gender, people of a specific cultural background, not because of any conscious bias that was baked into the actual engine or the artificial intelligence. It just happened that it wasn't a very diverse group of people that built this artificial intelligence engine, and that was reflected then, or magnified in a way, by the outputs from this particular engine. So I definitely think that when it comes to developing these tools and sort of the future of where things go, yes, we need people's input. Yes, we need to kind of have, I think, more of a a generalized kind of forum where we can discuss and we can talk about, how we want to steer the future of these things. But I also think it's incredibly important to make sure that the people who are building these are, a representative group of what, we on like the earth look like, and not sort of a self-selected group who just happen to be people who work in technology, who look a certain way or come from a certain place, or are in a certain racial or socioeconomic group. So I think all of this kind of again builds on this idea of reactance, that nobody wants to be told or be subject to something that they don't feel like they're reflected in or they've had input on. So as we kind of go through and look to the future of artificial intelligence and developing these engines and tools, I think we just have to keep those two things at the front of our minds.
I mean, obviously very critical moving forward that we keep humanity at the center of it, but the people who are putting their money behind their things, is this a priority for them? Because
I mean,
over the
probably not, but it probably should be.
It should be, 100% agree. Same thing with like ethical considerations and governance. That's been left because everyone was so excited about the speed that this was happening. And I think the neglect now on the ethical and governance will have an impact as it evolves, unless it catches up. And I don't really see how it's going to catch up. But I'm not an expert, so I don't know. I mean, in your line of work, do you see a lot of like your clients? What are their kind of feelings about AI? Are they happy to integrate it into their marketing? Are they a little more standoffish? Where do they land?
I would say it's a spectrum. If you tell anybody, I think in a marketing position right now, or if you tell most people, hey, we've got this amazing AI tool and it does this really cool thing, the next question they're going to have is, all right, well, what's the benefit for my business, right? I think we're kind of getting to that point where, yeah, AI is a really interesting thing and people's eyebrows kind of go up when you say it. But I think we've kind of gone over a little bit of the hype curve where people are now kind of trying to say, yeah, it's really interesting and yeah, it has a lot of potential, but how does it help me right now? And I mean, I think that's just business and marketing, full stop, right? I think people are very focused on, quarterly returns, and they want to make sure that if they're going to invest time and energy in things, they're going to see an immediate return on that. Which, and not to kind of bring it full circle too much here, but something like Dragonfly. So, you go in with a predictive AI tool and it's really clear how you can use it to improve, creative, or you can use it to improve like product and packaging design. They get really excited about things like that because it's clear how things can be improved right now. It's not a, hey, let's start integrating AI and we might see an improvement in a couple of years, or we're not quite sure what the improvement might be. So I do think we've kind of hit that point in the hype cycle where people are beyond just saying, oh, I'm really excited, let's get in AI any way we can, to let's be thoughtful about how we're going to integrate this into the future of our business and make sure that it's improving, the bottom line, but also customer experiences, relationships with our customers, the brand, and how does this all kind of come together to improve commercial outcomes and improve our relationship with our customers.
I just want to know what your opinion is on that last question.
I think Jen covered the co-creation. So maybe what I could add is, so this new term, neuroethical research, maybe not neuroscience, but we can combine them together. So neuroethical research could explore how our brains are actually processing the ethical dilemmas. And then I believe that should be a feedback to the next generation AI. So because we always worry about producing something clever than us. That's true. But we have to look how humans are solving these ethical issues, our dilemmas, and then those needs to be feedback into this new generation AIs or new AIs that is gonna, will be with us in future. And then I'll come back to public engagement because that's something I heavily work. There should be more public engagement done about this, and there should be more transparent and as Jen said, this diverse perspective from it, and it will be a co-creation. So we're going to build our future. So we have to come back and listen everyone out there and how they feel about it. And coming back to ethics, I believe neuroscience studies could could come in as well by looking at our emotional responses when we are making decisions, especially those moral decisions, and then how we understand the fairness, or our fairness perception, and how if we can model trust as well, and then feed all of this back to the next generation AI. And then last thing I would add is, I think Jen also talked about this, but like prioritizing the safety, fairness, and social benefits. So we have to tell them, okay, maybe you're being used as a data because there's a lot of CCTV cameras out there. People are using us as a data, but they need to understand that this is for our fairness. If something happens, we'll be helped, and then privacy will be available to us. And yeah, I mean, you feel like you're living in everywhere in London. If you go to the road, and if you take the train, if you go to the bus, it's all CCTV cameras. Everybody's watching you. You feel like, well, is something going to happen? No, nothing's going to happen. This is all for helping you. And similarly, AI is going to be beneficial for us. So it's going to help us, but we have to make sure that it is helping us in a fair way. So neuroscience could help in that aspect. But I would also like to touch on one thing as well, which is the context aware of AI. So currently what we have, as we discussed in the first part, was the uncertainty. Yes, we need to teach uncertainty, but we also need to teach the context awareness to the AI. And then they should know how to react in real life, or real world. Adoption needs to be there for the future AI. And then later on, we can look in how this is done in a human interaction with the help of the neuroscience, and then adapt it back to the AI as well. So I believe, those are the things that we have to be helping as a neuroscientist for future AI.
Jen mentioned, I think it was while you dropped off, about the issue of bias as well, and how I think it was Amazon, correct me if I'm wrong, who had like predominantly white male engineers, and there was an issue of bias come up. Now, Dragonfly AI is unbiased. Can you explain a little bit as to what, like how it is unbiased?
Okay. So, as you know, we make decisions in two different approaches. So we have a bottom-up feelings that we look in our area, and there's also top-down. So that top-down changes from our cultural background, and then all our previous knowledge and everything, and that can change from person to person. But when you look at Dragonfly, it solely uses the bottom-up attention, so which is universal to most of the human beings. Obviously, if you have problems with your eyes, it will be slightly different. But if you are assuming that everyone has a normal vision, not necessarily 20/20, but normal vision, things will be universal for everyone. And the beautiful thing about Dragonfly AI is it's a biological model which analyzes how we humans are actually seeing the world. So it comes back to where I explained about the next generation. I think we have to understand how the real world is working, how we trust each other, because this, ethics or the biases are already in there in the normal society. So if we can't solve it with a nice governance, it will not be able to be done by the AI as well. So as humans, we need to solve it first, and then I'm pretty much sure that AIs following us will be more robust and more safe, because they're gonna do the calculations, and then human error will disappear. So they're gonna remove that uncertainty, and then they're gonna make conservative decisions and ensure safety of us.
I have a final thing that I'm going to ask both of you. If you were in front of the just over 1,100 Americans who've obviously shown that they are a little bit terrified of the super AI, what would your reassurance be to them, given like your experience in the industry and what you've seen? Jen?
I would say, first of all, it's probably not going to be Skynet. Hopefully it's not going to be a killer robot that destroys humanity. But I do think that having concerns about AI and where it's headed, how powerful it could become, the hold it might have on everyday life, I would say that I would acknowledge that those are, the fears that are rational to a certain point, right? But I would also say that, we're in very early days of artificial intelligence. And I think that being conscious of things like, input from the public, bias that might be baked into some of these tools and engines, it is a good positive first step. And I do think that, because it's something that we're thinking about and we're not just kind of letting the technology, just run wild, just to be the first on, everything, is a very positive sign. So I would say, while they're right to have some concerns, because the ceiling on the risk is very high. And I think, a lot of the folks who, are in sort of these, the chat GPTs and things of the world would acknowledge that, like, it has the potential to destroy everything. The likelihood of that ceiling of risk being met is probably relatively low. So, we'll see how it, kind of develops over the coming decades, but just having these concerns around, the ethicalness, diversity in the models, like making sure, to Hamit's point, that, we're aware of issues that we have as humans, and we're, attempting to solve those before we just, run off and create, an AI that's going to kind of take our human foibles and magnify them, is a very positive first step.
Hamit?
Well, I mean, imagine what I would tell them is imagine that you're expecting a decision to be made about something that you're into, and then who do you trust? Do you trust humans doing it when there could be some mistakes making, or do you trust an AI to provide a support to the human who's going to make the decision, where they can access and calculate every possible output out there, which can access and look previously made decisions and provide you a feedback, and then humans can use that and make a decision. So I believe they're going to pick the one as the second option rather than the first option, because I mean, we as humans, we have trust issues to humans as well. So yeah, so but we are not saying that we don't want any humans to make decisions about ourselves, or we don't want humans to make a decision. So maybe I will deep dive into politics, but you will not agree. Some of us will not agree about Brexit, but it had happened. I mean, so this has. We don't lose the trust that politicians are not doing their work. Yeah. So you go for the next election and you pick someone else. So similarly, this is the truth about the AI as well. So you might have some trust issues, then you have to be vocal. You have to let this to be known, and you should ask for evidence that ethics and all these policies are out there, and it has been controlled by a governance which assures public that things will be all right. But they don't need to worry about anything. As I said, I mean, I might be worried if an AI creates an AI. Yeah, that's the alarming point for me, but we are far away from that. Yeah.
Just something to keep the rest of us up at night, right, Hamit?
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for your time. Honestly, I really appreciate it. And your insights have been invaluable. And I'm sure that our audience will find them really useful too. And yeah, it was great having you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.